So what happens when social justice gets detached from moral and spiritual frameworks? I'm going to explore Demons by Fyodor Dostoevsky today. So sit back, kick back, and enjoy this question that we're pondering today. So today I want to examine one of the most intellectually revealing moments in Fyodor Dostoevsky's novel Demons. In this scene, two seemingly minor speeches, one that critiques charity and another that defends ideals, open a window into Dostoevsky's deeper analysis of revolutionary movements and the psychological forces that drive them. Now, do keep in mind, Dostoevsky was writing in the early 1870s during a period of intense intellectual and political ferment in Russia. Radical student movements, nihilistic philosophy, and early socialist thought were beginning to reshape the intellectual landscape. Dostoevsky's novel is often interpreted as a response to these emerging ideological currents, but it would be accurate to say that it is more of a psychological investigation into the kind of human mentality that revolutionary movements can produce. So in this passage, I'm going to show you one character articulates a critique of charity that reflects the rhetoric of radical egalitarianism circulating among 19th century thinkers, revolutionary thinkers that is. And the argument is pretty direct. So this is what she says. She says, "Yet the pleasure of charity is an arrogant and immoral pleasure, a rich man's pleasure in his riches, his power, and in really the comparison of his significance with the significance of a beggar. Charity corrupts both him who gives and him who takes, and moreover, does not achieve its goal because it only increases beggary." Goes on to say, "Sluggers who do not want to work crowd around those who give like gamblers around the gaming table hoping to win. And yet that pitiful half kopecks that are thrown to them are not even 100th part enough." And if you go down here, just right here, it says, "Charity should be forbidden by law, even in our present society. In the new order, there will be no poor at all." So here we see an argument that rejects traditional philanthropy not simply as ineffective, but as morally suspect. Charity is framed as a mechanism that perpetuates inequity by allowing the wealthy to feel this sense of virtuosity while leaving structural poverty intact. Now, this statement reflects a key feature of revolutionary ideology, the conviction that social problems cannot be solved through incremental reform or moral generosity. Instead, they must be eliminated through a complete restructuring of society. The revolutionary imagination envisions a future social order in which poverty itself just disappears, not because individuals are generous, but because the economic and political structures that produce poverty have been dismantled. Now, keep in mind, Dostoevsky is not presenting this argument merely to mock it. In fact, he recognizes that critiques of charity had a certain logical force to them. Philanthropy can indeed serve as a way of preserving social hierarchies while alleviating the conscience of those who benefit from them. However, Dostoevsky's deeper concern lies elsewhere. He is interested in the psychological transformation that can occur when social justice becomes detached from moral and spiritual frameworks. Now, I'm going to show you a quote where this concern becomes clear in the responses offered by Stepan Trofimovich, who speaks very bluntly. So right up here, it says, "I will tell of that mean slave, that stinking and depraved lackey who will be the first to clamber up a ladder with scissors in his hand and slash the divine face of the great ideal in the name of equality, envy, and digestion." So now at first glance, this speech appears to be a passionate defense of cultural and moral ideals against the destructive tendencies of radical egalitarianism. Stepan imagines a figure who destroys what he calls the divine face of the great ideal. And this metaphor suggests that noble aspirations, justice, equality, human dignity can become disfigured when they become instruments of resentment or material appetite. So now look at the phrase envy and digestion, which serves special attention. By invoking digestion, Dostoevsky is suggesting that revolutionary movements can sometimes reduce human life to purely material concerns. When political ideals become more detached from spiritual or moral foundations, they risk becoming expressions of basic appetites rather than genuine moral commitments. Now, in this, Dostoevsky subtly implies that this generation really helped create the intellectual movements, an environment that later produced revolutionary radicalism. In other words, the same culture that celebrated progressive theories in salons and drawing rooms eventually gave rise to activists who were willing to pursue those ideas through more radical means. And this generational tension is really central to the novel's broader philosophical framework. The older intellectual generation will speak eloquently about ideals, but they rarely act on them, and the younger revolutionary generation rejects this perceived hypocrisy and seeks to implement radical change. However, in the process of doing so, the younger generation, well, they risk abandoning the very moral ideas that they claim to advance. So in this sense, Dostoevsky's analysis anticipates a broader pattern that has appeared in many historical revolutions. Revolutionary movements often begin with legitimate grievances and noble aspirations. No one can deny that. They promise justice, equality, liberation. Yet, when we look at the psychological forces that accompany these movements, resentment, humiliation, and the desire to overturn existing hierarchies, these can sometimes transform those ideals into instruments of destruction. For Dostoevsky, the most important question is not merely political, but it's anthropological. What kind of human character is capable of truly sustaining a revolutionary project and sustaining it for its intended purposes? His answer, developed throughout Demons, suggests that revolutions are not driven solely by philosophical ideas or economic conditions. They are also shaped by inner emotional lives of the people who carry them forward. It's naive to think that these feelings of humiliation, envy, and resentment won't become powerful catalysts for radical change. It's when these emotions attach themselves to political ideologies that can generate movements that seek not only justice, but further into revenge against existing social structures. Dostoevsky therefore presents revolution not simply as a historical event, but it's a psychological phenomenon. The true drama of Demon lies in the interplay between ideas and the human passions that animate them. By embedding this debate within the dialogue of his characters, Dostoevsky transforms what could have been a straightforward political argument, right, just at its basics, into a profound exploration of moral psychology. And the novel invites the reader to reflect on a difficult question. When society pursues justice and equality, how can they preserve the ethical and spiritual foundations that give those ideals their meaning?